So we're going to talk about two more object pronouns. They're going to work as far as where you put them and everything, exactly where we've been putting le, la, le, and me, te, nous, vous. So we just have these two other words that are lui and leur. So our goal today is to find out what these two are for and when to use them instead of le, la, le. But where they go in the sentence is exactly what we've already been doing with le, la, le, as well as with me, te, nous, vous. So, lui and leur. What, like I just said, the only thing that's different is what are these? Everything else we know, we're going to apply. So what? Let's go back to le, la, le. What did they replace? A person or object. What do they mean? Him, her, it, or them. Where do they go in the sentence? Right before the verb. And we'll break that down again like we have been in review. What if there's one verb? What if there's two? Everything about that you know is still true. So, lui and leur, they only replace people. So we just reminded ourselves that le, la, le can replace people or things. Lui and leur can only replace people, and they're going to replace people that have an a before them. So like à Sarah, à ma mère, à mes grands-parents. And we see there's only two forms, lui and leur. So lui is singular. It can be masculine or feminine. And leur is plural. So it doesn't matter if for these, if it's masculine or feminine, there's just two forms, singular and plural, lui and leur. Notice that I put two in parentheses on these because sometimes in English we don't say to where the French use an a because we can't translate directly, right? For example, I call Sarah in French is je téléphone à Sarah. We don't say I call to Sarah, but the French do. So that is in parentheses because it's gonna our rule that we're gonna have in a second is based on if the French use to or a. Examples, tu écris à Sarah? Oui, je lui écris. What's the lui replacing? À Sarah. Tu parles à Marc? Oui, je lui parle. What's the lui replacing? À Marc. So lui can replace a boy or a girl, masculine or feminine, and it has a before it, which is why it can't be le or la. Tu téléphones à tes grands-parents? Oui, je leur téléphone. Grands-parents is plural, so now we use leur instead of lui. Tu parles à Marc et Sophie? Oui, je leur parle. Marc et Sarah are plural, so we use leur. Good news is this is easier in passé composé. You don't have to worry about making masculine, feminine, plural like we did with le, la, le. Voici Sarah. Je lui ai téléphoné hier soir. This lui is referring to Sarah. She's a girl, but we didn't make agreement here. But when we say je l'ai vu, this L apostrophe is la referring to Sarah, and we do make agreement. And again, like I said in French too, I'm not going to take off if you don't do that because speaking wise, you're not going to hear a difference of pronunciation in most verbs. Voici mes copains, je leur ai parlé hier, so I don't need to make an agreement on the end of this because leur doesn't need that. Je les ai vus, I put the S because les is plural. How do I know if I should use lui and leur? So instead of le, la, le, when should I use this? So first of all, we said lui and leur are only for people, and they're only for people with an a before them. In French, there's some verbs that always have a after them, like téléphoner. To call someone is téléphoner a. So you have to learn these verbs. When you see them, you know to use lui or leur to replace the person instead of le, la, le. So the list I'm going to show you right now, it's not all the verbs that have a, but it's the one it's short. These are only ones you're responsible for this year. So basically, if the verb is on this list, you're going to use lui, leur. If it's not on this list, you're going to use le, la, le for now. Me, te, nous, and vous can actually be used like le, la, le and like lui, leur, depending on the context. So eventually we'll see some of those. So for right now, we won't pay too much attention to that. But me, te, nous, vous could use the verbs on this list or not, depending on what you're talking about. Écrire, parler, rendre visite, répondre, téléphoner, acheter, demander, dire, donner, emprunter, montrer, prêter. If you think about it, all the verbs on this list have some kind of an exchange, whether it's an exchange of communication like to write and to speak, Or it's an exchange of an actual physical thing, like to borrow something from someone or to loan something to someone. So they all have as. When they're followed by a person, use lui, leur. The only one on here that you might want to notice that can sometimes be strange, acheter. Notice that this says acheter à. That's to buy something for someone. So if I say j'achète le stylo à Claire, I'm buying the pen for Claire. So I've got à Claire, so I can replace à Claire with Louis. What if I wanted to replace le stylo? J'achète le stylo. There's no à there. I replace le stylo with le. Je l'achète. I buy the pen for Claire. Je l'achète à Claire. Or sorry, j'achète le stylo à Claire. I'm going to replace à Claire. Je lui achète le stylo. So acheter would depend on if you're replacing who you're buying something for or what you're buying.